Okay, so if you saw this model yesterday, this is basically the design process. For those of you who are new to it, just believe me. And basically, you start, in the upper left quadrant, and then you go around clockwise. So we're going to be focusing on this top half today. Where we're going to be exploring and understanding problems, first in the real world and then in the abstract. Why do we do this? We call this generative as opposed to evaluative research. Generative research is when you're trying to inspire yourself. Evaluative research is like when what you're going to be doing later, where you're testing, a solution and learning what works and what doesn't work. So generative research you do to understand the goals, behaviors, and challenges and experiences of people that you design with, and hopefully, for and hopefully with. Um, you use it as a check against your internal biases. It's very easy to design for yourself, but you're not the only customer for the things that you create. And you want to understand the context and connections related to the problem space. So, you don't want to be surprised by something out of left field. And then finally, you want to uncover novel opportunities and inspire innovative solutions. These are two little stickies, like quotes that I keep on my personal wall next to my desk. I really like that. What is the point? The goal of doing this sort of research is because we want to understand the goals, the behaviors, the beliefs, and the values of the people that we're designing for. You can't there's no voice here, so I can't like call from someone from the audience, but if anyone knows what this photo is of, I learned about this, I don't know, probably 10 years ago, and I've just loved the concept ever since. It's called a desire path. Right. So, we're going to be doing interviews mostly during our research for the jam. But, in general, you can also do observational research. And I just love how this is showing, like, it's a physical, tangible evidence of like what people actually want. They could walk around, but that's not the most convenient. This is the way that people actually want to go. So this, you can see like their goal, the behavior, the belief here is like expressed itself in reality, which is kind of fun. So there's different kinds of value. This is a slide from Nathan Shedroff. Basically, a lot of people, it's easy to think about functional value and price, but there is a lot of value in the qualitative side of things, which could be meaning, identity, and emotion. I have a stuffed animal that was made out of clothing that belonged to my grandparents. To you guys, it might be worth 15 bucks, but to me, it's worth thousands, So what's the value of something? Could be different to different people. There's also this, we're not going to review it too much. I just saw this image in the Harvard Business Review at one point, and I just thought it was really interesting. It talks about, it's almost like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but associated with different values for people. So, when you're talking to people, when you're trying to understand their needs, you might say, oh, they choose this, or they made this decision over that decision because maybe it met more of these values for them than another offering did. So try to think about these sorts of things and try to tease these sorts of things out when you're doing your research. Like you're going to be digging into what is the real value that this person's trying to communicate. One way to do this is there's a tool called 5 Whys, but I just kind of like the thinking behind 5 Whys. So this is the quote that I showed in yesterday's presentation. People don't want a 1/4-inch drill, they want a 1/4-inch hole. This is also on the wall next to my desk, along with the sticky that I wrote. People don't want a 1/4-inch hole. They just want a way to hang family photos, right? So there's ways that you can keep digging deeper and deeper and deeper. Maybe they just want to be able to share memories, with people who come into their house. There's all these different things. So at some point you can get into this deeper, like what is the real driving force behind this? I believe that the deepest level is something that Jobs to be Done is trying to strive for. So Clayton Christensen gives this really interesting talk that's online, and I can give a link to it. And he uses the example of a milkshake. And so they saw all these people getting milkshakes in the morning, and they were trying to understand what is the job that this milkshake is doing. And they talked to a lot of people, and people didn't really think about it in terms of jobs to be done. But eventually they were able to suss out through their research that the people were on their way to work. They were kind of hungry. They were going to be driving in the car for 30 minutes. And so they really liked a milkshake because it fit in their cup holder. It didn't make a mess. It kind of filled them up. and it just did a lot of jobs really well. Whereas like a bagel might have been messy, or a donut might have been messy, or a Snickers bar might have gotten eaten too fast. So having like this thick milkshake really did a lot of the jobs really well, and kept them energized until lunch. So if you as a team want to try doing this, like when you bring your research back together, you can try to create what they call a job story. So in this case, it would be like, when I, have a 30-minute commute and I'm hungry, I want to eat something that won't be too distracting and will give me energy so I can be happy until lunch. You might be able to try to write a job story. And again, this presentation will be available to you guys afterwards. So I really see a big tie together between jobs to be done, which I didn't learn about until after I graduated, and service design, because you kind of have the product, the service, and the experience, they're all doing the same job. In this top example, this person just wants clean clothes. So they could get clean clothes through owning a washer and dryer, through a laundromat, or through a delivery service. So there's going to be pros and cons to everything along this spectrum. And same thing, you can own a car, you can hail a taxi, or you can get an Uber. They're all going to help get you from A to B. But again, there's going to be pros and cons to owning a car versus just having an Uber, especially in DC, where parking might be a pain. So what are we going to be doing today? We're going to be doing a session of interviews, and you can do some desk research as well. The internet is at your fingertips. So for developing interview questions, here are some kind of tips for how to develop good interview questions. As a team, hopefully you've been talking a little bit about the problem spaces that you're going to be tackling. Try to figure out, like, where are the knowledge gaps? Like, what are the things that you need to know? When you're then drafting your questions, avoid leading or closed yes or no questions. You don't want to give the answer to your interviewee. And if you just ask yes or no questions, you're not going to get a lot of information from them. So it's better to encourage them to tell stories about their experiences. And even then, I personally think it's better to ask stories of things that actually happened instead of asking them to imagine a future case, because people are sometimes bad at predicting their own behaviors in the future. Some areas that you might want to explore, there's a list here, I won't read over them. And then a fun interview closer, this is something I've just experienced from my practice, is asking about the magic wand. Sometimes we call it the genie lamp, which is, if you could magically and immediately change one thing about your experience, what would it be? This is usually a fun way to figure out aspirationally what people want. Like, it gets you closer to their ideal experience. And now when you're doing the interviews, and you guys can practice this soon, although a lot of these tips are more for in-person interviews, but they should be able to work on Zoom as well. So, you would normally start by reminding your interviewee that there's no wrong or right answers. When people start talking, often there's a fun experiment we do where one person basically talks and the other person only listens for like 3 minutes, and it feels super awkward. But as an interviewer, you don't want to interrupt them, because sometimes people are talking, and then if you let silence go, you can almost like count to 10 in your head. They'll continue talking again, and they might tell you even more. Another thing you can do is to mirror the body language, and to avoid your own biased interpretations. Try to take down exact quotes. I found this is really, really useful with clients, especially because, then we can say, hey, look, you're not arguing with us. This is exactly what the customer said. I'm just the middleman. Don't hate us. You can keep an eye out while you're doing the research. Keep an eye out for people's workarounds and try to dig into those. Like, oh, it didn't work. So then what else did you do? How did you deal with this problem? And then, of course, I would say try to uncover the jobs to be done. Another fun one is be curious, ask follow-up questions. What and how questions are better than why, again, because people sometimes are bad at understanding their own motivations. This is something that you need to suss out through talking to them. So that's exploring. For understanding, we're hoping that you'll be able to do some clustering and derive some themes. We'll be asking you to create some how might we questions. And then if you have time, or if you're able to like split the workload between your teammates, you might be able to try to do a jobs to be done, like a job statement, or to create a very basic high-level customer journey. I'll give you some examples of those. First, this is the affinity map and theming. So we'll basically be asking you to take all the notes, take your research, and then share it with your team and try to group it and cluster it. And then once you have the clusters, try to name those clusters. And then if you can, try to create an insight statement out of the cluster once it's all created. So this will be a big and important part of what you're doing today. You can also, you might not have time for this, but I know a lot of people are kind of new to service design, so I thought I'd give an example. So a lot of times when you're trying to synthesize or understand what you've collected, using a journey map can be a very useful thing to say, like, oh, so based on all the people we've spoken to, this is kind of the overarching experience that they're having. And a journey map normally has time along the bottom, and then you have the experience kind of negative to positive along the vertical. And so this is just, and you can break it up into phases and discrete steps. So this is just one that I made for fun a few years ago to show what a customer journey map can look like. I thought this was funny because I learned something through interviewing some of my coworkers that, as a guy, when I leave getting a haircut, I've always wanted to just run home and take a shower immediately because I've got like little hairs on me and they're itchy. When I spoke to women, I learned something new, which is like women think when they leave the salon, they're like, oh, I feel great. Like this is peak hair experience. So I tried to show that in the journey map. And then the last thing we're going to ask you to do is craft how might we questions. So first, here's an example of an insight statement that you might get, something similar to this when you are clustering your notes. So shopping for clothes is like an arduous, painful test of your stamina. And then there's different ways that you can kind of twist or tweak this to create how might we statements. I'm not going to read over all these, but you can just look over them. And again, when you guys are making your own how might we statements, I'm happy to make this available to you as a reference. So to recap.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
What is HMT?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
I'm so, yeah. This is why it's the emperor's new clothes. It's good to be reminded. HMY stands for how might we. So how might we is basically the way that you would start a question. You would say like, how might we make clothes shopping better? And the reason we use how might we is because they really do invite. They're very open-ended, right? It invites many different possible answers. So how might we make clothes shopping the best part of your week? Well, we could attach cake and ice cream to it, or we could make sure that it happens on a Friday afternoon, or like there's lots of different ways that you can answer this question. So as designers, we found that how might we questions really do kind of trigger and inspire lots of different answers. Thanks for asking. So yeah, to recap, this is what you'll be doing over the next couple hours, I guess. So first, as a team, you've started already working on number one, what seems to be a problem. Next, you'll be talking amongst yourselves and trying to figure out like what are some of the uncertainties or gaps in your knowledge, what are some things that you want to know. And then while we've already basically set up that you're going to be doing interviews today, in general, you would then want to strategize and say, what is the best way for us to find answers to these questions? And sometimes it's a workshop, sometimes it's observational, sometimes it's a survey, sometimes it's a focus group. There's all sorts of different things. So we're going to give you approximately 30 minutes to get to the end of this. And then we're going to give you a section where we're going to be breaking you into groups of two, and you're not with people on your team, but with people from other teams, and you're going to take turns interviewing each other. You'll each have 8 minutes, and then we'll put you with someone else, and you'll have 8 minutes each again to ask each other questions about your topic, about your problem space. So that's the exploring. And then for understanding, we're going to have you come back to your teams. You're going to be sharing what you saw and heard. You're going to start clustering and finding patterns. You're going to try to create insight statements. And then based on those, you can create how might we questions. We're going to give you about 30 minutes for this. And of course, I think because we had some tech issues, we wanted to give you just like a lunch, but maybe we're going to have a bit more of a working lunch. So feel free, amongst your teams based on wherever you are to move a little faster or a little slower. All right, let's jam. I will turn off the presentation and come back in, and we can have some Q&A if we need to.
Hey guys, great presentation, Yosef. Thank you for that. Do we have any questions? Remember, we're all here to learn, even if you're beginner level. That's why we're here, just to share our thoughts and knowledge. And by the way, the new Space Jam comes out July 16th with LeBron James. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Would we have time to prepare questions before the interview from David?
Yes. Yeah, we're going to be giving you very shortly. I forget what the actual schedule is, if we're going to go straight into that or if we have one other thing first. Maybe some organizer can tell me. But
Right now we're
gonna
going to
give you
do,
about 50 minutes.
we're going to refine questions and identify research objectives now. So
That's
what
happening.
you're going to do right now, your teamwork number 2. So remember, assume, introspect, strategize. That's what we're going to do right now. So time to refine some research. Are we ready to go? All right.